Many thanks again. Thanks for your presentation, and above all, the opportunity to introduce the Catalan case here at Stanford. Because why I'm here today? And I'm here because Catalonia is at a crossroads. These are grave times for us, within the existence of political prisoners, exiles, and hundreds of Catalans being investigated and judged. Only truth and justice can be our way forward and our guide to freedom. This pursuit of freedom that is, at the end, the real way to understand Catalonia along its history. A Catalan poetess, Zoraida Burgos, said once that one must look for our roots in the mythical idea of peace and freedom. This is why the title of this conference is Self-Determination and Civil Rights, a Catalan Perspective, because the exercise of our right to self-determination and defending civil rights are precisely our road, the Catalan path towards returning the idea of peace and this idea of freedom. And what is Catalonia? Some of you may wonder. Catalonia is an old European nation, and its people is plural in their origins, in their languages, in their beliefs. It is certainly a society attached to its native language, culture, and tradition, but it strongly believes in the value of diversity and openness to the world. And at the same time, it knows that if we lose our values, we lose everything. I speak about a nation with a millenary history and culture, a nation that was once free and wants to be free again. I told to you all in the midst of the gravest situation Catalonia has faced since the death of General Franco. Last year, we held a referendum of self-determination that was met with violence by the Spanish state. A referendum based on every people's right to self-determination according to international law and treaties. Around 2.3 million people voted. 90% of them did it for independence. Police violence couldn't stop them. Many of us, for the first time in our lives, had to face violence, but we resisted and peacefully defended our ballot boxes with our own bodies. That day, something new was born in Catalonia, something from which there's no way back, because you'll never retreat once you've been so close to freedom. That referendum was made possible thanks to the commitment of our people, but also the commitment of our politicians, our government, and our social leaders. Today, we have 9 political prisoners, 9 exiles, among them President Carles Puigdemont, and hundreds of people investigated and fairly accused by the judiciary and variously punished. As President of Catalonia, I'm proud of their courage. I'm proud to be able to say that our leaders have shown itself ready to pay a personal price for their ideas. When I speak to you, I speak on behalf of a society that has seen how its human rights have been violated. I speak on behalf of a solidary people that has understood that dignity is non-negotiable, that human rights are non-negotiable, that the rights that help our societies to advance cannot be suspended. I speak on behalf of a people united in its defense of democracy, humanism, and dignity, and against intolerance and autocracy. I want to tell you thus that the future of Catalonia lies on its defense of the civil rights and the principle of self-determination. And I will tell you as well that we shall overcome. The late Jane Sharp said in one of his books, "Freedom is not something which rulers give their subjects. It is something achieved in the interaction between society and government." Today, Catalonia faces the most important of its challenges, the peaceful a non-violent struggle for freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, freedom of assembly, freedom of demonstration, freedom to have rights, the right to have rights, freedom to choose your destiny in a democratic way. And what is today going on in Spain with all these freedoms? What? All these rights. Freedom of expression is now restricted in Spain. Rap singers go to prison and to exile for their lyrics, and even art exhibitions have been censored. Even Amnesty International has denounced this situation without any consequences. Freedom of assembly is also questioned, thanks to an authoritarian gag law that even the New York Times has recently criticized in an editorial article. Freedom as the right to have rights has been also affected, and many Catalan laws have been declared null or suspended. Laws on climate change, on universal health, on social services, all these laws have been suspended, not because of their content, but because they had been approved by the Catalan Parliament. I'm talking about these essential freedoms because this aspiration, in my opinion, is America's lasting legacy to the world. During the last 240 years, the world has seen how this country strove towards the idea of freedom for all its citizens, and we hope that you will overcome the changes ahead. The Catalan people nurse exactly the same aspiration as the other peoples of the world who want to live freely, in peace and mutual respect, and who have chosen to live under these conditions no matter how hard their realization may be. And we hope that the large consensus achieved among the Catalan society will soon prevail, because the pro-independence movement is not only central to the current political debate in Catalonia, but also has the social majority in its demands, as it's shown by the last two elections to the Catalan Parliament that have confirmed its democratic mandate with an absolute majority for pro-independence forces. Today, the three big consensus of Catalan society, supported by 80% of its population, are: first, that we don't want to live under an outdated monarchy, always under the suspicion of corruption; that second, that we don't tolerate political repression, the exile, and the imprisonment of our leaders; and finally, third, also with an 80% of support, that we want to exercise our right to self-determination and that our will must be respected. These three consensus, referendum, an anti-repression front, and republicanism as a form of government, are fundamental for our future. If Spain is really a democratic state, it should listen to the demands of the people of Catalonia. Spain should listen to the Amnesty International and the World Organization Against Torture when they call for the release for our political prisoners. Spain should listen to the American Pen Club. Spain should listen to the Canadian and American Academies of Political Science. Spain should listen to Human Rights Watch when it says that on the 1st of October that there was an excessive use of police violence. Spain should listen to the UN reporters. It should listen to the Nobel Peace Prizes that call for the end of repression. It should listen to all the democratic voices around the world that are calling for a political solution for a political problem. If Spain is democratic, it should allow the people of Catalonia to decide freely its future without people in prison, without people in exile, without threats. Because only by attaining our collective freedom can we protect and exercise our personal freedoms. In this time of troubles, we have understood that the defense of the civil rights of one single citizen mean the defense of the civil rights of all of us. If they repress one of us, they repress us all. To defend freedom, we must do everything within the scope of our power, in the sense in which Hannah Arendt defined power in opposition to force. The struggle for freedom for Catalonia and for all its people is our goal, our commitment, and the mission of my government. However, freedom and justice are not free. There's a price to be paid in order to enjoy them. We know it, and we are not afraid. Catalonia is a nation open to its neighbors and to the world. Since ancient times, human, cultural, and trade exchange have built our identity. We've always believed that openness is basic to success, and even more today in a globalized world, we cannot ignore change. As I said before, Catalonia is a very diverse society. Today, 70% of the Catalan population has at least one grandparent from outside Catalonia. Many were born outside the territorial bounds of Catalonia. During the 20th and the early 21st centuries, we have worked to integrate several waves of migrants. Catalan society has been able to incorporate people from a wide diversity of origins and oriented them towards a future of coexistence. This is the key to social cohesion. In Catalonia, immigration is a realm of memory in Pierre Nora's sense, where people grow roots not in the past, but in the future. This is yet another vision shared by Catalans and Americans. This character of Catalonia as a host country and a space of shared struggles is a matter of pride for everyone, with more than 200 languages being spoken today in Catalonia. With these premises, it should not be surprising that there is a strong consensus on the welcoming of refugees, and Catalan families have volunteered in the past to host refugees' children for extended periods. Our identity drinks both from our traditions, including our language and culture, as much as from the will to build a better future together. But lately, an issue other than identity is gaining importance: emphasis on democracy and civil rights. Repression has reinforced the democratic engagement of the Catalan people to the point that we are rethinking the role of government vis-à-vis democratic and civic movements. The movement for self-determination is also a movement towards a greater empowerment of the people, a movement towards more and more participation. We are determined to use the grave situation we live in to build a better country, a country that doesn't exclude anyone, a country that has economic prosperity, equal opportunity, and social and environmental rights very close to its heart. It was an American president, Woodrow Wilson, who 100 years ago put the principle of self-determination on center stage of geopolitics. Since 1945, the West has been governed by rules-based institutions that, under the uncontested lead of America, have promoted trade liberalization and democracy around the world. Since 1945, global trade has multiplied by 12, and the number of independent states has gone from around 76 to 195. Old and oppressive empires have disappeared. Decolonization took place and freedom spread through the globe. Only in the last few decades, more than 1 billion people have escaped poverty thanks to the spread of globalization. I said before that close to 100 new independent states have been born during the last decades and full-speed globalization, but what I did not say is that many of these new states are small, or at least not as large as the old ones, and this is not a coincidence. Globalization, free markets, and the Western preference for democratic solutions to political conflicts are the reasons why it has become increasingly rational for small nations to have their own independent states. Small nations no longer need to be part of a bigger state in order to access a larger market for its products, because the American-led commitment to free trade has greatly reduced tariffs and barriers to commerce. Small nations are, on average, more prosperous than big ones, and more democratic and peaceful. As an independent nation, Catalonia's economic viability is absolutely certain. This is the context in which our struggle becomes possible. Like every other people, Catalans have a right to self-determination, the right to decide their own future. And the struggle for self-determination is a long one. It did not start in 2017. Already, in the year 1640, a republic was proclaimed in Barcelona. Also, in the year 1931, a Catalan republic was proclaimed in parallel with the Spanish one. Even here, in San Francisco, in the year 1945, under Franco dictatorship, a group of Catalan exiles claimed for the right of Catalonia to its self-determination in the very same moment that the United Nations was founded. As we did again on the 1st of October last year by conducting a referendum in the face of police violence. Regardless of how much repression the Spanish state applies to us, we will continue our non-violent struggle. But now, what is clear is that only an international mediation will convince the Spanish establishment that the political solution for Catalonia needs to be based on the democratic will of its people. Only the power of international pressure will force the Spanish state to sit around the table and negotiate. International public opinion is going to be crucial in the next months. In times of growing authoritarianism, defending the right to self-determination of Catalonia is, in Americas and in the West, geopolitical self-interest. It is in America's own interest to defend those who defend political ideas by democratic means and to protect small nations and defend the principle of self-determination that is at the core of its own national existence. As long as there are political prisoners, exiles, and the rights of the Catalan people continue to be denied, the door will remain wide open for authoritarian countries to feel justified in repressing their national minorities. A Catalan independent state would be an example of how to solve historical conflicts in a democratic way and would also be a partner in the effort to promote a more democratic world, a more American world. President Bill Clinton, in a well-celebrated sentence, said in Barcelona that the world would be either Catalan or Taliban. With this phrase, President Clinton recognized the democratic, tolerant, and open-mindedness of the Catalan people, its permanent choice of non-violence to defend its national rights. He was right. And even though the struggle is not easy and the costs are high, we will succeed. Dr. Martin Luther King once said that non-violent resistance is the most powerful weapon that oppressed people can use to change the world, and I agree with him. Moreover, as the Stanford academic Francis Fukuyama says, liberal democracies stipulate that power must be exercised in conformity with civil and political rights. Accepting human rights is the best way to legitimize power. Today, Catalonia, as America did before, wants to achieve its right to statehood and to defend the civil rights of its people. However, our non-violent struggle is long-standing and has adopted many forms. The Catalan language is more than 1,000 years old, yet it has been banned and persecuted repeatedly by the Spanish government over the last 3 centuries. Our civil society has struggled and continues to struggle to normalize the Catalan language and culture. Without the silent struggle of our parents and grandparents to preserve our identity and culture, today, Catalonia would only be a geographical name. 40 years after the end of the dictatorship, it is clear that Spain did not fully transition to democracy. The police, the courts, the army, and a relevant part of the state's high-level officials, what is known as the deep state, never really evolved from the dictatorship, and many are the offsprings of high-ranking Francoist officials. The present state, in many ways, preserves the power relations and attitudes of the Franco regime. We can't forget that the father of the King of Spain was promoted and designated successor by Generalissimo Franco himself. Our social and political leaders have been imprisoned unfairly for a rebellion that never committed. They have been jailed more than 1 year. 1 year without their families, without their friends, without freedom, and without their civil and political rights, being violated. But we have had enough. Our political prisoners have rights. They have the rights to be free. They have the right to have a fair trial. They have the right to international justice. They have the right not to be threatened as criminals. We have had enough of the criminalization of a peaceful movement. We have had enough of the institutional violence used against our people. We have had enough violations of human rights. We have had enough of Madrid's denial of the legitimate right of Catalonia to self-determination. We had enough of all this. Repeating another quote of Dr. Martin Luther King, he said, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is not time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action." And yes, the gravity of the Catalan situation, with a political trial that will begin maybe in 2 weeks or 3 weeks soon, against the legitimate representatives of the Catalan people, where all their civil rights have been violated, makes it high time for the Catalan society to engage into vigorous and positive action. As Jordi Cuixart, social leader and president of Òmnium Cultural and prisoner of the Spanish state for more than a year without trial, has said, as a movement, we must continue to engage in the non-violent methods of our struggle, to engage in civil disobedience and mobilization, and understand that this struggle will have a cost. And so, today, Catalonia sees how human, social, and civil rights are impossible to separate from each other and from the right to self-determination. And this is why I call to the international community to act with the fierce urgency of now and engage into an international mediation that allows the Catalan people to effectively recognize the exercise of our right to self-determination. For all these reasons, I am fully convinced that the Catalan people will not accept prison sentences for our social and political leaders. Non-cooperation with injustice is a moral obligation. And the Catalan people should decide what to do, dignity or indignity, and react accordingly. I'm convinced that they choose dignity. As Catalans, we are faithful to the American and Western ideas of freedom, social and economic openness, and the non-violent defense of civil rights. All of them ideas that will be judged during the trial for the Catalan referendum. The US can look to Catalonia as an outpost for its own principles. The Western world cannot allow the suppression by force of a democratic movement like ours. Tolerating authoritarian methods only reinforces authoritarian states. In Spain, in full democratic regression, the struggle for the Catalan Republic is the only way to get back our civil rights and our democracy. Here, in the United States, where you value the freedom and dignity of peoples, I want to proclaim with all my hope and conviction that the day will come when Catalonia will achieve a statehood, and that will not be the end of our efforts, but a new beginning. Then we will have the greatest challenge of all, to build a new state based on the principles of freedom, justice, social cohesion, openness, self-determination, and non-violence. This is our path, the Catalan way, and to these principles we shall stick. Thank you very much, and ready for your questions.
Thank you. Thank you. While the questions are being monitored, I'll just take the prerogative of asking the first. And